You're listening to the Road to the Garden podcast, presented by House Enterprise and in partnership with House of College Hoops. Head over to our site, house-enterprise.com, for more info. We've teamed up with SeatGeek this season to get you the best deals for tickets to your favorite team. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, and they're here to give you some great deals. Get in on the fun and head over to SeatGeek, download their app, and use code NCAA Hoops Digest for $20 off your first purchase.
Good evening, Big East fans. It's Matt St. Jean here with Chris the Dinga for a special end of May episode. It's NBA Draft Decision Day. Chris, how you doing?
Good. A draft decision day that was relatively unscathed for the Big East. I'm happy to be here, and thanks for having me on.
Of course, big day for Creighton. We're going to be talking about them. A big day for UConn here, and a big day for Villanova as well for non-NBA draft reasons, which we're also going to have to be talking about here. Lots to go through, and I think unscathed is the best way to say it. Like, things went as expected for the Big East today, I think, with maybe one minor exception for Creighton, which if you're on Twitter, you saw a report that had to be pulled back on uncertain Creighton players. So that added a little drama to the day.
I was shaking my head, man. Kick rocks, Trilly. I'm sorry, Trilly. I take it back immediately.
Yeah, Trilly Donovan, the noted anonymous Twitter account that knows all, did not know all in regards to Trey Alexander, who announced he'll be returning to the Creighton Blue Jays next season, along with Ryan Kalkbrenner. They'll join Baylor Shireman, who's back, Stephen Ashworth, who's coming in, and a whole host of other guys we're going to get into here. Arthur Kaluma also announced that he will not be staying in the NBA draft, but it appears he's not staying at Creighton either. He is in the portal. I guess we'll start there. The assumption is that he is out of the picture here for Greg McDermott and the Blue Jays.
Yep. He will be gone. It sounds like the front runners are Texas Tech and Kentucky. Davion Mintz, if you're familiar with Creighton, that's a name that might pop out. He transferred from Creighton to Kentucky a few years ago. Calipari and McDermott have a pretty good working relationship, where in that situation, Mintz just wasn't really going to start for Creighton, and he found a home at Kentucky where he played quite a bit. I could see, I'll put my stake in the sand and say I expect Kaluma to go to Kentucky. I think that could be a good fit, depending on some last-minute decisions here for Kentucky on draft day.
And that's going to be the Oscar Tshiebwe-less Kentucky Wildcats, correct?
Yeah.
Wow. Shaking things up. But back to the Blue Jays. This is a team that, that just the scoring that's going to be back because of Alexander and Kalkbrenner is phenomenal. Alexander averaged 13.6 points per game last season, 4.2 rebounds, 2.6 assists, shot 41% from deep. And then in the paint, Kalkbrenner, 2-time Big East Defensive Player of the Year, back-to-back, trying to win it 3 times in a row now, averaged 15.9 points, 6.1 rebounds, 2.1 blocks last season. Can you talk about what it means to have this duo back in the blue and white?
Well, it's huge. Kalkbrenner, I saw this today, and I thought this was a pretty good way to frame it. Kalkbrenner's the floor raiser, right? Like, with a defensive presence like Ryan Kalkbrenner, you are not going to be bad. And I think him coming back made their floor exponentially higher. And then Alexander coming back raises the ceiling, right? Like, I genuinely think he will be, or could be, good enough to be a first-team Big East type of guy next year. He has the skill set. And the keys will kind of be given over to him next year. Ashworth will be running the point, but I expect Trey to be running that a fair amount as well. And then with Nembhard gone, like, a lot of the playmaking will come in Trey's hands. So with both of those guys coming back, Creighton will be just fine. And I think the floor is probably, I don't know, take your guess, but 4th in the Big East to me. I think that's the very worst they could do with this roster. I think this offseason as a whole, Matt, has to be viewed positively for the Blue Jays.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And you lose. It's crazy to say that when you're losing Ryan Nembhard and Arthur Kaluma, but you keep 3 of your big 5. And Stephen Ashworth, I love his fit I love Ryan Nemhard, but in some ways, I think he might actually be a better fit for what Greg McDermott likes to do and the way the offense is going to work out there. I like the way his skill set complements Trey Alexander's, and you can't beat the 3-point shooting of Alexander, Shireman, and Ashworth out there. That's going to be one of the best shooting trios in the country next year.
Shoot, and add Farabello in the mix. He shot over 40% at TCU 2 years ago. I expect his numbers to tick up as he gets a little bit more playing time this year as well.
So the issue for Creighton last year was depth. Do you think they're better on that front? Because we've seen them work the transfer portal a little bit. You're going to get Mason Miller with a little bit more development. Isaac, is it Trout?
Yeah, Trout.
Trout coming in from Virginia. He was a 4-star. They're having some guys come in. Do you think it's enough?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting and loaded question because last year, if you read the receipts on what I was saying about Creighton coming into the year, I said one of their strengths was the depth, right? I was really excited about Sharif Mitchell in year 3 and Farabello coming in, Mason Miller in year 2, year 1 in a red shirt. But I thought the depth would have been just fine last year, and it wasn't. And I think part of that is they didn't really play the bench pieces enough to get any true run time, right? If you're playing 3 minutes a game, it's hard to get a flow, especially for guys with less experience. So I think part of it is I think Greg will play it a little bit different this year and maybe get those guys a little bit more experience early in the season. But I think the bench overall is more talented. You add Jonathan Lawson as well. We hadn't talked about him. I was talking to one of our colleagues here, Michael DeRosa, about Lawson earlier today. And he played a really big role for a Memphis team that was pretty dang good. And he shoots 40% from 3. I think he's a good piece off the bench as well. And yeah, I think they'll be just fine in the bench department.
Yeah, and you're betting between Lawson, Miller, and Trout. All these guys were 4-stars at one point. I think you're basically betting that you can get a little bit of that 4-star play out of one of them and competent backup play out of one of the other 2. And if you do that, you're going to be all right. You also got Frederick King in the mix here, who should be a backup. And he was a really solid player last season. Another year of development should help him out. And I like the depth. I like what I'm seeing.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Fred King, in his limited run as a starter when Kalkbrenner was gone, man, he was super good. And then down the stretch, he kind of struggled a little bit more, but with more runtime next year, I think he could be a really solid backup to one of the best bigs in the country.
And that's hopefully all he's going to be asked to be next season with Kalkbrenner back in the mix. Final question on the Blue Jays. How high is the ceiling?
Shoot, first, right? First in the Big East. And I think the Big East is slating to be the best conference in the country, in my humble opinion. So I think Creighton could be right there with the best of the best. Top 10 is certainly not out of the question. Top 5, maybe. Sure, if things all pan out right, why not? What do you think?
Well, I don't disagree. I think the ceiling can be way up there. I think the issue is this team could finish 3rd in the Big East and 5th in the country, depending on how things break. One of the other teams formulating into that mix, you talked about best of the best. It's the UConn Huskies. They're getting one of their playmakers back for next season, Tristan Newton. They're losing one in Andre Jackson. Those 2 guys led the team in assists, I think 4.7 per game from each of them. Adama Snogo, I think we knew he was gone, but confirmed that again today. So he is out. The youth movement starting to take over for the Huskies there with this really strong recruiting class coming in. But you have Tristan Newton there to kind of be the steady hand. Do you think that's enough for UConn's playmaking next year?
It certainly helps, right? I know me, you, and Tommy Godin were talking recently about genuinely who's going to carry the basketball for UConn if Newton and Jackson leave. Stephon Castle, is he even a point guard? No. But yeah, so having Newton back certainly helps, and you're so talented across the rest of the court that it probably is just fine and serviceable. We had similar concerns last year when Newton wasn't playing awesome at the beginning of the year, or in that slog after the beginning of the year where UConn lost. I think it was 4 of 7 or whatever it was. We were like, man, they just don't have the playmaking. And then they won the national championship. So I think they'll be just fine. And Newton has proved himself to be a Big East point guard.
Yeah, he was excellent for them last year. He was their leader in assists. You got Hassan Diarra. He's still in the mix there. And
Sure.
he was a fine kind of secondary, or not even say, he's your first guy off the bench who was a good facilitator for you. And I think he can be in that role yet again. You're going to be asking a lot from the freshman here, but that's always been the plan for the 23-24 Huskies. They just got there, I think, a little bit ahead of schedule this past season. I tend to think they're going to be all right. Newton, Mr. Triple-Double, a guy who really stepped up his game in the NCAA tournament too. I'm not sure. I mean, you lose Sonogo, Andre Jackson, Jordan Hawkins. Like, that's a really tough trio to lose. And that's, I think, the big question here for the Huskies next season. Can they recapture the magic? Can you actually have freshmen that come in and live up to what these guys are leaving? It's an open question, but do you think these guys are able to do it?
Oh, the bar's set quite high, right? The highest in the sport. I don't think they're going to win a national championship, and I don't think they're going to win a Big East championship, but they're going to be a very, very good basketball team. I will ask you this, because I do think that in large part, UConn's success is dependent on this question. They're 4 and 5 pieces, so Klingon and Caravan. Where do you have that down low tandem in relative to the rest of the Big East?
It's got to be one of the best in the conference.
But I think it has to be the best. I think for them to reach the highs that they want, it has to be the best.
Yeah. I think I like it more than what Marquette has to offer, just because if we're talking about draft decisions, Max Prosper, he's gone from the Golden Eagles. He'll be leaving. And David Joplin was 6th man of the year last year. He's really good. I think Alex Caravan's better. Klingon, I think, is probably going to be better than Iguodaro. Very different games. Very hard to match them up against one another. I look at Providence because of Bryce Hopkins. Hopkins will probably have the edge on Caravan, although Caravan did a very good job defending him last year. Klingon is going to be better than Oduro. That's, I think, an easy one.
Oduro's going to be good, though. Yeah.
And then you look at Creighton. I think Kalkbrenner probably maybe has the edge on Klingon. I'll give it to him for experience. But the 4, I think, for the Blue Jays is the open spot right now. Is that going to be Shireman?
No, it'll be Trout initially, unless things don't pan out with him. But I expect Shireman to solidly play the 3 all year. Okay.
And if that's the case, then I think UConn probably has the edge overall for the 4 and 5 combined. And who else am I missing? Oh, Villanova, which I know we're going to have to talk about here with the big addition they made. Let's segue this to Villanova right now, because they added Tyler Burton from Richmond, who I think is probably going to play the 4 for them next year. That's what he's played for, the Spiders. Eric Dixon, one of the better centers in the league.
Yep.
They might have the best argument here for a 4-5 duo next to the Huskies.
Yeah, man. Burton is not going to be, I think some people might sleep on him just because the A-10 last year was a little bit down and Richmond wasn't super awesome, but man, he's a playmaker at the 4. I think he might be the best playmaker in terms of shot creation as well as athleticism at the 4 outside of Bryce Hopkins.
Yeah, he's really good. And he was a key part of that Richmond team that knocked off Iowa. Remember a couple years ago, everybody thought Iowa was the hottest team coming into the NCAA tournament, and the Spiders caught them in their web right there and stopped it before. What happened to Richmond in the next round? Do you remember, Chris?
I remember, man. I took Richmond in my bracket out of spite just because everybody was picking Iowa to beat Providence, and I was like, "Fuck all of you! It's not going to happen." So I didn't even really know much about Richmond at that time, but it worked out.
Yeah, and then the Friars soundly defeated them up in Buffalo to get to the Sweet 16. But yeah, Tyler Burton also got with Providence connections. His dad, Quentin Burton, played for the Friars back in the 90s. So coming back to his roots in the Big East. And this is a Wildcat team that should be able to fly with all the wings that Kyle Neptune has added. What do you think of the roster construction there?
I think it's super unique. I don't really know how to phrase it correctly. They're super switchable, and their defense will be so fun to watch. But I don't know. Outside of Dixon, they don't really have a true big that's really good. And the ball handling abilities are still. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't know though. They're very talented, and I think they should. It's a roster that should compete among the top 3 in the Big East.
Yeah. So just to set it here, You got Justin Moore and Mark Armstrong in that backcourt, Eric Dixon and Lance Ware as your centers, and then Hakeem Hart, Tyler Burton, TJ Bamba, and Jordan Longino. I think we call Longino a wing here, wing or guard, however you want to say it. But a lot of guys who can fill that role, and you're going to have really good players at the 6 and the 7 for the Cats next year. And I think that's this is a big departure from the style of Jay Wright, adding a whole bunch of transfers. I think this is a team that should play deeper. They used to play lots of short benches with Jay Wright. You'd only play 7 guys, and I think they can go deeper next year. It's yeah. And they added a GM there for their basketball operations, which I had previously said that was the first GM in the Big East for basketball. I'm wrong. DePaul added a GM before last season, so I'm going to give credit to the Blue Demons there. Second GM in the Big East. That award goes to Villanova. They turned over a new leaf here in a hurry.
Yeah, I will say, Matt, we just talked about it off air recently, but with Providence how hard it is at times to keep your 7-man that is an experienced player that used to be a starter at another team, which will probably happen looking at their roster, to keep him content and bought into the role that he's playing. I think that might be the biggest job for Kyle Neptune in year 2 is just maintaining, keeping everybody on board for the goal for Villanova as a whole and not just for each player. So we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah, because you're going to have good players playing limited minutes next year, and that so much of just being a college basketball coach in general is kind of ego management. It's just like guys who think I'm going to the NBA next year, we're playing 15 minutes a game for you because the guy in front of them is also very, very good.
Yeah.
It's that type of thing, which, you look at Mark Armstrong and Justin Moore, they are 2 very, very good players, and you got to get them both on the floor. But getting them both on the floor means you got to take, Hakeem Hart off or TJ Bamba off or Tyler Burton. One of those guys has to come off the floor, and that's a tough ask. So they got depth. I'm very curious to see how the pieces come together because I like the defense, like you said, but it's interesting. They have so much defense in the middle and no rim protection whatsoever. So those guys are going to have to be good.
Well, I thought Dixon did a fine job in rim protection last year. They weren't great, but they certainly weren't the worst in the Big East.
No,
I think it's serviceable. I think they will be just fine in that department. It won't be their strength, but Burton helps out a little bit too, just because he's so athletic.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And you mentioned Providence, the specific connection there. You go back to the 21-22 Friars with Justin Minaya and Jared Bynum kind of swapping off for offense defense. And Ed Cooley had a talk with Minaya before the season, basically saying, hey, like even though he ended up starting for the most of the year, it was, hey, you're going to be our 6th man here. You're going to be our defensive specialist. We know you're a veteran. We know you're experienced. We know you want a lot of minutes. You're going to have to buy into this role to get those minutes. And Neptune's going to have a couple of those conversations in the coming months, I think.
For sure.
Yeah. And Longino could be that. He's a defensive asset there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to see what he looks like in that group because I think he could be a real X factor in the limited minutes he plays that can kind of set you apart from some of these other teams because you're playing against a team like Creighton and those couple extra depth guys can be the difference maker.
Absolutely. We saw it. We saw it towards the end of the Big East season and then in the NCAA tournament against SU. Wear them out, man. That's how you beat them.
Yeah. I know we're going to go through Bart Torvik. His website has projections right now, just kind of general roster projections based on who's there. I think they're all up to date. I haven't gone through them individually, which we're going to run through. Before we do that, though, I see Jerome Hunter Fan Club in the chat, and we did miss. There was Xavier news today. We were talking mostly about the NBA draft stuff and decisions and all of that. So I hadn't mentioned it in the rundown at the top, but I will give a shout out here to Sean Miller. They landed a 4-star for next year. Jonathan Powell coming in, big get for the Musketeers, and they've Sean Miller's done a nice little job recruiting over there for this incoming class with a couple 4-stars in it, and next year adding guys now, and yeah, the new generation of Musketeers there under Sean Miller, it's growing.
Yeah, man. His roster construction in the 2 years he's been at Xavier has been so good. I'm very excited to see how Xavier looks on the court next year.
Yeah, now that's Another one I'm excited for. We'll get to them here in the rankings. How do you want to do this? Do you want me to go top to bottom, bottom to top? Do you just want to call out teams and I'll tell you where they are?
Let's do this. Give me the number. At least let's start at the bottom and give me the rank, and I'll try to tell you what team. I haven't looked at Bart Torvik this year, guys. I promise.
And all right. And to be again to set this up, this is Bart Torvik's current. This is 10:52 p.m. Eastern on May 31st. This is the info we're dealing with. Their current projections for next season. He said this on Twitter. Like he has last season, he manually changed Zach Edey's rankings because it was telling him Edey was going to be so good that he didn't believe it was possible. And he put up for Edey's projections for next year. Now that he's coming back, he's like, no, I'm not doing any manual changes there. It's projecting like 21 points, 12 rebounds or something crazy like that. So yeah, Xavier will get to see Zach Edey in the Gavitt games week 2. So that'll be fun. All right. Coming up the rear of the Big East, we got a team projected at 143 in the country.
Well, that's got to be DePaul. Has to be.
It's not.
No, Georgetown.
Yeah, it's Georgetown, which I thought that was very interesting because there's been a lot of change there. But Bart Torvik is not as optimistic as some are about where the Hoyas are. I kind of, just because it's Ed Cooley, expected the Hoyas to come out somewhere near the top of the Big East teams that don't make the tournament. They don't agree.
Yeah. I think a couple of their players, Cook is one that I think is being massively underrated by all of the analytical measures. He's really, really good under the right coach, and I think he'll get back to that form next year.
Yeah, I like him. He's just had issues staying healthy. If he's on the floor, it's a very different team. Speaking of a Cook, they added a Supreme Cook to the roster today. So that's a big ad for Cooley. Somebody who Cooley actually knows because Providence plays Fairfield fairly regularly in the non-conference. So Ed Cooley's had to game plan against Supreme Cook a couple times in the past couple of years. I'm not sure how his game's going to translate to the Big East level. If they're expecting him to start, we'll see how that looks. But yeah, so Georgetown ends up pulling up the rear here. Has Jay Heath projected as the leading scorer for the Hoyas next year. Next up, 132. I think you're going to get this one.
There's DePaul. There we are.
Yeah.
We made it.
Yeah, that's the Blue Demons, which is unfortunately fair, I think. I don't – this offseason –
They just didn't do anything, really. Anything of note, right? Jeremiah Oden is probably their best ad, in my opinion, and he barely cracked the lineup in a Wyoming team in shambles.
Chico Carter from South Carolina. That's the guy, and they like him too. Yeah. But even he is like, I don't think he's better than Devin Carter, a guy he played behind there for the Gamecocks, and feels like a lot of the guys on this team feel like Power 6 backups who transferred there looking for a starting role. And maybe you catch lightning in a bottle and get guys to perform way better now they got a coach that believes in them. I think that's kind of the message there, but 132 feels fair. Yeah,
the one saving grace is hopefully Ongenda is healthy. He's really, really good when he's healthy too. Just having an interior presence. Last year they didn't. He should be by the start of the year. Last year they just didn't have an interior presence for a lot of the year, and having that will very much bolster their prospects.
So you think of him as a defensive asset, correct?
Yeah.
I was coming through, unless I am reading this really incorrectly, I was coming through, I'm forgetting the name of the database now, Synergy. It's coming through the Synergy database the other day, and it had him ranked as one of the worst defensive players in the Big East when he played last season.
That is surprising to me.
Yeah, which I'm gonna have to dig into that a little bit more and see what I can pull from that. But I was shocked to see that, and it could just be an aberration because he only played part of the season. And I think you're asking a guy to jump in 2/3 of the way through. It's not going to be great when he's coming back from an injury. But did not expect to see that number.
Yeah, limited sample size, and then I think towards the end of the year, the wheels were pretty much off the wagon there. The effort for DePaul was a little bit wavering. That certainly is probably part of it.
And ask Seton Hall fans how good his defense is.
Yeah.
Next up, 93 So we've cracked the top 100 now. The rest are going to be in that group.
Well, that's got to be Mr. DeRosa and his Bulldogs, Butler.
Yes, it is. That is the Butler Bulldogs there. 93rd, 112 for offense, 100 for defense. So a nice balanced look there for the Bulldogs. Got Posh Alexander and DJ Davis as the top scorers. Jamal Telfort. I like the Telfort addition. I have questions about Big East's size, but I think he can score for them.
Yeah, what do you think of Posh in this fit here? I know there was a lot of questions and a lot of speculation about how it's going to look with him. I'm curious your take.
For a team that needed shooting, I don't think he answers that. But this is a team that has typically won with defense, and he helps that a ton. And people forget that we are less than a year removed from him being preseason first team. He's a guy with a ton of talent. And I think when you look at what happened at St. John's last year, it's hard to blame any individual players for why it didn't work with the coaching situation. So the better coach, I think Posh Alexander, could realize that talent and be that kind of guy. I'm not sure how high the ceiling is because they need to see the shooting happen before I'm going to believe he can be a true offensive weapon.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? I think I agree with you where Posh, in the right system, he can be a very effective player because he brings certain things to the table that are genuinely super attractive, but he's not an A-tier scorer. That's just not who he is. And if Butler expects him to be that, and looking at the roster, they're going to kind of need him to be that. I just don't see it working out super well.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. And you got like Pierre Brooks. I'm very curious to see how he ends up working out for them. I like Jalen Thomas. DJ Davis also, like, he comes in with a scoring pedigree, which is good, but like, I don't know. It's like there's a lot of guys here who may have already hit their potential coming from a smaller league for one season. And it's good for culture, but Butler's building, and this isn't the year. The year is probably the year after where you start to see things go in the right direction. And that makes sense with how late in the cycle Thad Matta got hired last year. This is essentially the first time he's gotten to hit the portal and get his guys.
Mm-hmm. We'll see.
Yeah. So that's where Butler stands. And now we're getting spicy. 72 is the next one. I'll help you out. This team is projected 46th on offense, 114th on defense.
Man, okay.
Because I have a feeling, I think I know what team you thought it was. But I said 72, and I think that just went totally out the window when I gave you the offense defense.
Then it's not going to be the team that I initially thought. But Bart Torvik is wrong for this. It's going to be St. John's.
Yes, it is.
And that is abhorrent, Matt. Abhorrent. They have Jordan Dingle, who very well might be a top 4 player in the Big East next year.
Yep. And it's that defense. Like Rick Pitino teams just play defense, man. Like they always play defense. There's no way. So like St. John's will be a top 100 defense in efficiency next season.
I would bet anyone
that's
right now
minimum.
Top 60.
Yeah, it's probably, and I'd probably top 50. Like that's where it's like they should hit that. Still have some questions about the offense, but like Dingle and Soriano alone is like with a well-coached defense, that's alone to get you into the tournament. And that's this should be a top 50 team in my eyes. I was shocked to see them that low.
Dingle, Soriano, and Dennis Jenkins make a 1-3 punch that is serviceable enough that they should absolutely 1,000% be top 6 in the Big East and then clinch a berth to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, by 10 or 11 wins in the Big East. Do well in the non-conference. I got to actually pull up what the non-conference schedule is looking like right now for the Red Storm. That game meets Michigan. I'm so excited for. That's going to be entertaining. Yeah, it's just Rick at MSG. That alone is worth the price of admission.
Against Jawan, man, be great.
Get your popcorn ready for that one. I'll be there too. I'm excited for that. Yeah, I'm not going to miss that one, especially as I sit here with my Michigan cup next to me. Michigan's my football. Don't worry, Big East fans. I'm not cheating on you. Michigan's just for football, but
no, just for football, the sport they're the very best at. Yeah, for sure, man.
I was born there. I'm a Tom Brady guy. I gotta rep the Wolverines. But yeah. All right. So this is. I can't wait to see the look in your eyes when I read this next one. We're up to 53.
No, it's too high. It'll be Seton Hall.
Yes,
It's
that
too
is
high.
Seton Hall 53. Top 100, exactly 100 offense, 27th on defense is the projection.
Yeah, I kind of take issue to that. I'm curious your thoughts, but if you look at Seton Hall last year and how they did defensively against really good competition, it was very poor. And so I don't know how they're ranked that high defensively.
Well, that's something I talked about last year. I was like, sure, this defense is good on paper. It doesn't win you games. Every single time there was a game they needed the defense to win for them. Not every single time, because they won that UConn game. Every other time, when a legit offense came to play Seton Hall, the defense had nothing. And I know part of that's the offense too, and the way it sets you up. But like, I thought they were a defense that was really good at beating up on mid-tier offenses.
Yeah,
that's what I saw.
Give up 83 against Creighton, 83 against
91
Marquette.
91 to Kansas, I believe. Yeah.
91 to Kansas, 75 to Creighton again, 82 to Xavier. Like, that's certainly not a top 25 defense, in my opinion. And they don't bring anyone in that's going to change that needle. Kadari Richmond is a super good defender, but I don't know. Nothing is super inspiring to me.
I like the Alamir Dawes, Dylan Adewusu, Kadari Richmond guard trio, especially with I think Adewusu, Kadari Richmond defensively. I like that. And Alamir Dawes is not the best defensively, but it does play with intensity, and Shaheen Holloway is going to get that out of you. So I buy into a higher floor on Seton Hall than people expect. Okay. Because I think they're going to play with an intensity and they're going to play with an energy, and they have guys that buy in. So they're one of those teams that's you're going to look up and you're like, how did they win 8 games in the Big East based on the roster? And they just have a couple grinded out games there and they'll pull off an upset. They'll beat one of the teams at the top in a way you don't expect. But
I'm curious. So what's the floor? You said they have they have a higher floor than a lot of other people are saying. What's the floor for them, you think, in the Big East in terms of rank?
Well, it's tough because it's probably 8th. Yeah. It's less so where they finish in the conference. It's more so the way they do it and just the raw total of wins. 8th of the Big East can be 8 wins some years in the conference and 4 wins some years. And they'll be closer to that top. I think they finish under 500 in conference play, but near the top end of that. And they're just going to be hanging around all year long. Now, I think I still have questions about front court play. And that's where they won't be able to hang with Creighton or with Villanova or with UConn on that front, and probably not Marquette either. So maybe they don't snag a win against the top teams, and maybe I'm hyping myself up too much, but I don't know.
Yeah, Dre Davis is fine. I don't know. Yeah, I agree. There's front court problems there that kind of need to be addressed.
Yeah. They got a pair. They got Jaden Bediako, who's 6'10", Elijah Hutchins-Everett, who's 6'11". So you're relying on those two guys to get it done for you. And you know what? I think if you watched any Shaheen Holloway press conference last year, you saw how he was very willing to throw those guys under the bus for not playing the effort for him. So we'll also give him benefit of the doubt here that if he finds guys who will give the effort he's looking for, even if they're not the best athletes, even if they're not the best players, it's just going to work better than it did last year, at least in some ways.
Yeah, we'll see.
So that's... I'm hoping. It's even close to the top 50 though. That seems high. So you know what? Maybe Mr. Torvik knows something we don't.
Never know. He did have them below St. John's, which is a egregious fault in my opinion. But we'll see.
All right, now we're getting into the top 50. We're at 49 here with what projects as a pretty balanced team. Okay. Now we're in tournament range. So who are you thinking here?
Yeah, so I think we got 6 teams left, if I'm thinking in my head correctly.
Yes.
Man, I'm going to go with Providence here. Balanced team. Yeah, that seems like the right spot for Providence to lie, at least before the season.
Yeah. That's kind of where I am. We talked in the last episode about what we thought Providence's ceiling would be. How high do you think they can get?
Fourth in the Big East. Flirting with top 25 in the country is probably, I think, the ceiling for them. They're going to be a good team and a tournament team, no doubt, in my opinion. Bryce Hopkins is fantastic, and Oduro is underrated, I think, by most national pundits. They're going to be good, but I don't see that next level to get them in that Creighton, Marquette, UConn area, even Villanova. But I think tournament team is the right slot for them.
Kim English was on John Rothstein's show earlier this week, and he mentioned Bryce Hopkins going to be shooting a lot more threes this year. He was a pretty good shooter. He was a 36% shooter last year on limited volumes. I think if he becomes a guy who could be a true 3-level scorer for the Friars next year, I think that's what would be the X factor for this team cracking that top 4, plus development of some of those guards. We know Kim English he basically wants the entire team to be 3 and D. Staunch defense, force a lot of turnovers, shoot a lot of threes. It's kind of what Mike Anderson was looking for, but with 3s instead of 2s in transition and more organization, a little bit less chaos, which fits. Kim English played under Mike Anderson when he was first playing college ball there. So it makes it, if they get the 3-point shooting they're looking for, I think it's a team that can absolutely crack the top 4. If they don't, or they get some but not all of the shooting they're looking for, I agree. And this seems like a team that'll be kind of just inside the bubble all year long, and I don't know, probably looking at a 10-7 seed in that range.
Yeah, especially if some of the youngins pan out, if Garway Dwall is as good as some people think he will be, maybe they sneak onto even the 4 or 5 line. But I still think just because the conference is so damn good next year, I think that's still probably 4th or 5th in the Big East.
And that's where there's something like the Gavitt games in the Big East, Big 12 battle are going to be huge. Because if the conference can kind of stay its claim in those and get some big wins there, then when you beat up on each other in conference play, it doesn't hurt you quite as much. If you look at the Big 12 last year,
right,
the top 7 or 8 of the Big East could be just like that.
Yeah, people would move up in net rankings after a loss in the Big 12 last year. It was insane.
I've never seen anything like it. Yeah. And you would assume that would lead to a national title, no?
Yeah, naturally. Yeah.
All right. We got, I'm going to give you one more here, and then we're going to switch to a different format. This is number 40. I think you'll be able to get this one.
Okay. I think I'm going to overthink it, but I'm going to sure try not to and say it's either Xavier or Villanova. And I'm not 100% sure which way I'm going to go.
I'm going to need an answer, Mr. Thadinga.
Yeah. Xavier.
Here. You are correct.
Yes. Oh, okay.
Musketeers coming in here at 40, just ahead of the Friars, which I think Xavier and Providence probably have somewhat similarly talented rosters, and Sean Miller gets the benefit of the doubt over Kim English, obviously, as a coach at this moment. So that fits for me.
Yeah. They'll be fine. I don't see the super high ceiling. I don't know if Davion McKnight is a Big East point guard or ball handler.
Well, that's what I said about Sule Boom last year, and I had to eat a lot of words on that one. So
yeah, I better be careful. I don't want to be bulletin board material for Xavier here. But Fremantle being back is going to be super fun, and Jerome Hunter is awesome. So that'll be good.
Yeah.
Floor is super high. They're not going to be bad.
Yeah, that's how I feel about Xavier, Providence, and St. John's next year. I think all 3 should be pretty safely in the tournament, and I don't know if they get a win in the tournament, but they should be in.
Yeah.
Now, for the final 4 teams here, I'm just going to give you the spots where they are in the rankings, and I will let you kind of slot the 4 teams in.
Okay.
So, this is the look on your face when I read this off. It's going to be what we got. The next team after 40 is at 14.
Wow.
Then 13. Then 12.
Oh, God.
And then 4.
Okay.
So where do you think the teams slot in?
I'm going to say 14 is Villanova.
All right. Do you want me to give you yes or no, or do you want to guess all four? And then
I'll do all four. I don't want to
All
spoil
right.
myself. The reason being is I love the roster, but um, is it worthy of being top three in the Big East yet? I don't know. We'll see. Uh, I don't think I could give them that claim quite yet. So we'll go Villanova at 14, at 13, UConn. If it is reflective of after today, so without Jackson and Sonogo, I think that's probably the right spot to put them. 12, we'll go Creighton, and then 4, I believe was the last one, Marquette.
You did not. Wait, who'd you have for 12?
Oh boy, Creighton.
Yeah, you did not get a single one of them correct.
Well, it's a coin flip for all of them, genuinely.
Yeah, it is, especially those first three. So the actual order is going to be Marquette at 14, Villanova at 13, UConn at 12, and Creighton at 4.
Gut reactions: too high on Creighton, too low on Marquette.
Yeah, I think you could move that one next to the digit from one team to the other on that one. I think I think I would have UConn over Marquette right now with Newton back.
Okay.
I
think
Sonogo
matters more than people see Klingon. They say, "Hey, that's just as good of a center." Okay, awesome. Even if he was, having the both of them was so big for them last year because you were never not having an all-star center on the floor. They won't have that luxury next year, and I think that matters more than maybe people are seeing. I don't know.
Yeah, that could be. Unless Dan Hurley really pulls something out here with the recruiting. Who do they have? Yusuf Singare next year is a 3-star, 137. Unless he turns into another Klingon. So they figure that out. Which they got another big boy coming in. He's 7 feet tall. So
okay.
They're
never know.
Yeah, you know what Dan Hurley is looking for in a center right there.
Yeah.
He's got a type.
So where would you rank that top 4?
Right now, are you saying like in the country or just in order?
Just order, yeah.
UConn, Marquette, Creighton, Nova.
Okay.
In that order. I don't feel great about it. I think it's definitively a top 4 now that Tyler Burton is at Villanova. And I think we mentioned before, but if I didn't, Hakeem Hart was technically in the NBA draft until today and declared that he will be coming back to college. So, no, he's not leaving because Burton came in, and ton of experience for Villanova. Like Justin Moore and Eric Dixon is one of the better 1-5 punches in the Big East in the country, and just everything else. And that team's 4th. Like it's wild because I really like the other 3 teams.
Yeah, Villanova. It's a weird one where I don't know. I can't justify putting them top 3 right now. I think they have to be 4 for me, but I wouldn't be surprised if they won it. They could be sweet. I don't know.
Yeah. When I was really high on them last year and got burned, that was also because some of the depth didn't pan out the way I thought it was going to, and they just addressed all of that in the transfer portal. The other thing with Marquette, the metrics were always a little bit lower on Marquette than like the resume was last year. But there was a point where Marquette kept winning and the metrics stopped ticking up, and that was around the kind of back-to-back close wins to win the Big East kind of situation they had with the wins over Xavier and Creighton. And that's when they stopped ticking up. And I think they were in the teens going into the tournament last year or something like that, which isn't quite 2 seed. It isn't quite best team in the Big East. And it's like, all right, if you take that and you swap out some guys and you assume like a natural improvement, but also other teams are going to improve, it might be a team that just ends up in the teens in the metrics again, but with different outcomes in games that could land you 4th in the Big East, and it wouldn't really shock me. It could be the same quality of team, and quality of opponents goes up, luck gets a little bit worse, and you just win less games because of it.
Yeah, legit. It's going to be super fascinating. I've never been more excited for a first place race in the Big East. I don't think ever. It's going to be really fun, and I could genuinely see 4 to 5 teams winning it, which it's great for the sport. It's great for the conference. That'll be fun.
And I think there are scenarios for the three teams that we think are probably in the tournament here that aren't in the top four, Providence, Xavier, and St. John's. There are scenarios where any of them can factor in to that first place race. Just, things break all the way the right way for them. But nobody thought Marquette was doing this last year. So things break all the way the right way for them. Let's say for Xavier, they strike gold on the Conference USA transfers yet again with Sean Miller. It's a team that could be as good as any with Fremantle and Hunter there manning the 4 spot. I really like how that works out. And if everything else, they got some guys in there who are developing Cam Kraft, Des Claude, like all that comes together. I see it. A Rick Pitino team finishing first, I don't think would ever surprise me for any reasons. Like that's just, if it happens, it's like, oh, well, yeah, he's still that good. And I think we talked about the Friars, but the depth of that backcourt is just like, if all the guys live up to their potential, that backcourt is really, really, really good, especially with 3 and D guys. So we'll see how it plays out, but I'm so excited for next season.
Yeah, it'll be great. Yeah, that was a fun little exercise. It's truly impossible to predict is what I got out of this.
Yes, and I suggested that too because I knew Creighton was 4th, and I wanted to see a reaction. The whole thing was just to see a reaction when you find out that's where Creighton is in the projections right now.
Like that's super exciting and all, but I mean, I don't know. And here's my problem, Matthew, is that everyone was super rah-rah about Creighton last year before the season, and they were very good at their best. They were awesome, but were they ever a top 3 or 4? Or even 2 from John Rothstein team in the country, even at their best? No, probably not. I think the same thing's here. If you put him at 3, you put him at 4, I think it almost sets up a situation where it's nearly impossible, even at Creighton's best, that they meet that level. They're going to be awesome, but that's a tough bar.
And it wouldn't surprise me to see 4 Big East teams in the top 10 at some point next season. It also wouldn't shock me to have all 4 hang in the teens all season long and just kind of max out there. A lot of that's going to depend on the non-conference. You look at UConn last year, and the way that they steamrolled through Phil Knight, plus with some good showings from other teams, set the tone for all of Big East to play and kind of set what the rankings were going to be. So then when you beat UConn, it's this huge win, and that propels everybody else up. We'll see how that plays. We haven't had you on since Gavitt games, and I think Big East Big 12 got set. So before we go, do you have any thoughts on those? Any matchups you're really looking forward to in those?
Creighton, Iowa will be really fun. I don't know how many people from the Midwest are listening to this or whatever, but that'll be a really fun game. I like to beat up on Fran McCaffrey in my private life, so for Creighton to do it will be great. But no, I'm really excited for the whole event. That's such a great thing, and I hope it continues forever. It is awesome for the Big East. I'm a big fan, and I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, that'll be a great time. Second week of the season for the Gavitt games. Big East Big 12 was what? Right end of November, first week of December, or something like that. The schedule's weird this year. It's like a Thursday through Tuesday.
Yeah, I think they have the week after Feast Week, though.
It starts the week after Feast. It starts like the Thursday after Feast Week, but then wraps around the whole weekend. But I think there's only one Saturday game. It's like a Tuesday night triple header or something like that. It might be 4 games. I think it's actually 4 games on the Tuesday night to wrap it up. So it's not the way I would have scheduled it, but these are the cards we're dealt. So we'll get around to it. I think that's it for tonight. I don't have anything else. You got anything?
I don't. Thanks for having me on, and go Jays.
Thanks for coming on, Chris. Wild draft day here as Big East rosters finally getting set. Finally have a full picture. Thanks for coming on, Chris. I am Matt St. G. Make sure you go follow the blog, follow us on Twitter, subscribe wherever you're listening to this, subscribe to that YouTube channel. Hit. If you're watching, and you should be watching, you should definitely do that. Go follow Chris on Twitter, follow me on Twitter. Definitely go do that. And we'll be seeing you at some point in the near future. Thanks for watching.